Graphics. Who doesn't love graphics? While there are some that are flat out incredible, others are just pure and utter garbage.
Garbage! And that was a disgraceful performance, in my opinion.
For years, I've watched tons of NASCAR races and been amazed of how far graphics have come. From the simple days of CBS Sports and ABC Wide World of Sports, to the over-the-top information ESPN provided during the Speed World era. And then there's some absurd, cluttered, and of course, laziness. Either way, graphics are an essential part of a NASCAR coverage. In an era where new and original content are hard to come by these days, it's about time NASCAR graphics to strap on and be critiqued. And it'll be right here on Auto Rockin' Racing 94. Before we get started, I wanted to say I appreciate your patience on this long-awaited video. It has been a difficult couple months where I've been busy with personal activities and trying to keep my career afloat. The video I uploaded about this project came out on July 1st and thought everything was going to be okay. But life happens, and it's taken me months to finally put some time into this project. If I ever get to 250 subscribers, no rush, I'll do a special video to give you who I am as a person. But that's for another day. Without further ado, let's dive in with TNN Motorsports. The Nashville Network was a great gym in racing television. You had your humor.
There's Rusty. Looks like his stomach is on fire.
I don't believe you said that.
Oh boy.
Terrific music, which again I'd love to know what the song titles are.
The Texaco Haviland Ford, Ernie Irvin in his 5th Winston Select. He'll start 13th. Back from retirement, subbing for Bill Elliott in the McDonald's Ford, Taylorsville, North Carolina's Harry Gant.
Excellent insights and terrific coverage, no matter who was the lead commentator. But what's often overlooked is how they utilize certain features and try different techniques that wasn't seen in the sport at the time. Here's how I'll break down each graphic. I've decided to showcase races at Rockingham and its flagship event, the Winston, because of time constraints. Maybe on my next video I'll show different races. But with the sudden new graphic package from a certain network, I'm looking at you, Fox Sports, it won't happen until episode 3. Alright, green flag is out and the analysis is underway. When I put this video together, I was going to use the Busch Grand National race from Rockingham in 1991. Well, thanks to the clutch uploads by Alex VD, TNN's first Winston Cup telecast is finally up. The GM Goodrich 500 at the Rock. No kids, not the Rock, I mean the Rock. North Carolina Speedway, you know, the track hasn't been on the calendar since 2004 in the Premier Series. Whatever. The graphic package looked like what Prime Sports and ESPN used around this time. However, one noticeable difference is the car numbers having its own column instead of number, hyphen, driver. And the grid was scrolling down. Nothing fancy, like the CBS and again ESPN grids, where it had photos of the driver and car. Also, TNN only showed the running order before going to break. There's really nothing awe-inspiring here. It's copy and paste from other networks, so no surprise. The next TNN broadcast at Dover, we had a new graphic package that was the first of a long history of graphic packages that TNN had. Rather than thin letters, TNN became bolder. No more boxes, just text. No more number on separate columns. It's joined together like everyone else. Besides, the noticeable difference, the style was the same. The grid was scrolling down. They showed the driver's name and photo on the upper right corner. This graphic package lasted until 1993, so it was around during the Winston of 1992, also known as One Hot Night, TNN's first all-star race telecast. By this point, they adapted into ESPN's grid format, minus the car they're driving. The music was something else.
And the cornflake car, Greg Sachs, goes right alongside.
Okay, I listened to Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I guess it's Southern country music being the network's bread and butter, but it's my weakest genre in my music rotation. This is what I dig a lot.
He's got the lead on the number 6 of Mark Martin. Mark Martin is the leader.
Anyways, their coverage was well done, and of course, who can forget that finish?
And it's Kyle Petty coming to the checkered flag. Here comes Davey Allison to the bottom.
It'll be the finish. Everyone was waiting for it. They crashed past the finish line. They have crashed into turn number 1. And Davey Allison is in a shower of sparks.
Later in 1992, their grids remained the same, scrolling down. Oh, nice. Driver portraits. Doesn't. Wait. Shouldn't row 1 be above the driver portraits? It's organized, but as a detail freak, it bothers me, especially for the younger viewers. They might not know what car they're driving. Well, they should have qualified better, and maybe we would see Dave Blaney's number 80 car instead of his young slick face. By the way, Blake Speed raced and beat Ayrton Senna before. Thankfully, the grid was cleaner at the 1993 GM Gunners 500, and they added a top checkerboard box to remind us that, hey, it's a starting grid. After all the craze of One Hunt Night, Dale Earnhardt seeked revenge. Anything but an all-star win would be a disappointment. The Intimidator won his last Winston that night, but one of TNN's first ordinary touch on graphics was the starting grid. Before TBS began doing this for their flagship race, the Coca-Cola 600, TNN began showing video clips of the driver before transitioning to the driver's factoids. I say that's awesome because it gave the viewers something to look at if they're quick readers. Look at the details of this grid. I wish they still show stats instead of the plain vanilla grids we get today. I feel like we've taken a step backwards on grids. Now, people of today will never get the significance of those starting grids. You two talk for a second. In my day, Brock Beard rekindled that magic, and when I watch those videos, it makes today's covers look like that one student who met the objectives but got a C because the individual wasn't specific on their responses. Starting grid packages gave fans a reason to stay tuned and watch those gladiators compete for the dough. Plus, everyone gets mentioned. Today, they just mention a few drivers and then focus on the driver. I want my bio and stats on schmucks like Cole Witt, 0 for 144 in the top 10 category, or how Mark Thompson was the oldest driver to compete this year at 66 years old, and his only prior start was in 1992. Those stats matter, damn it! Starting in 1994, the graphics had a facelift, and yes, cars were moving on the starting grid, even though it's Daytona except for some few cars. But hey, it was the second race of the year. They did it before TBS, folks. Yes, they did it before TBS. They adapted and showed drivers qualifying stats like ESPN. Again, they gave us their qualifying speed. One thing I liked was rather than show the first 5 or so rows, TNN went beyond and showed the entire grid and its cars. What the hell is up with Ricky Rudd's fire suit? Also, TNN took another page from ESPN and showed the Napa field summary. Before 1994, the running order was shown before and after race. Here, we get to see the running order throughout the race, but only after a certain number of laps was completed. Again, it won't be later that we see it the entire time, but for its time, it was cluttered, and the screen became small. Now, when they showed Sterling Marlin, I liked it a lot better. It's not much of a distraction, and it has its place. Kudos to them, however, this style didn't last, and by the end of the year, the grid was basic on the upper left screen. Vanilla. Comment if they just went on the air and already doing pace laps, so okay, whatever. That's a little bit of a nitpick. Also, the running order showed the entire field on a single screen. No transitions. You get everything here. Why do we need 5 or 6 pages of graphics when you can show all of it at once? Can't get nice things, but hey, I could poke fun of it because I have a degree in broadcasting. Moving into the Winston Select of 1994, I'll focus on the major overhaul. The color theme was yellow and blue. No, it's not because of Napa. The box returned and had various fonts. You had the bold font on the driver, but the subject matter had a Times New Roman look. I prefer fonts to stay the same, but with this one, I can live with it. I love this package because it made them stand out compared to the opening years, and it would continue to be this way until the end. Also, rather than the green flag popping up on the screen, it scrolled up, because TNN loves scrolling things, you know, before making a complete stop. I dig that touch. This graphic format will hang around until mid-1996, but before we go to that change, 1995 had some changes. The running order would come up often, only this time it was on the upper left screen, not taking up tons of space. Normally it was the top 5 drivers for a certain amount of time, but it's still kind of a distraction anyway. Probably why the top 3 was the preferred choice unless you're ESPN who went with the top 5 for a year or two in the late 90s. And yes, there was stats like how many laps the manufacturer led, which ESPN was known for doing a lot in the late 90s. Kinda short-lived, but it's not a bad feature to include. Another nice touch was during the running order before going to break. We got to see the manufacturers of the driver. Oh, going back to fonts for one moment, it still screams classic F1 graphics from 1994 to 2003. The 1996 Winston Select saw the early days of the next generation of graphics, where it was innovative and granted clean. It wasn't until late 1996 when it finally took off. You thought Fox Sports were the first to do this, right? No, TNN did it 5 years prior. They had an upper horizontal ticker from start to finish. It showed the top 5 with the position and car number on the blue box, and then the driver's name on the black box. Next to the numbers where you get intervals and drivers being off or out of the race. However, a minor nitpick I have is that it looks cluttered, but for its time, it wasn't seen elsewhere. And yes, we get how many laps the car in a race below the small TNN Motorsports logo. The next year, it saw a change on the ticker. The blue box was gone, and it was transparent gray, and sponsors began ruling the sport. You see MCI, remember that company? Napa, and the TNN logo popping up when it's featured. One last thing, if a driver DNFs, it's underneath the driver. Also, new graphics where the font stayed consistent instead of having different styles. It had a different edge because of its blocky font, and its main color when showing its subject was crimson red. Again, TNN stood out from the other networks. It had its own flair. But the following year, it saw yet another overhaul, which turned out to be the last. At this point, when a network keeps switching graphics every year, you run out of ideas, and it kind of bit them. However, this change was crucial. TNN had a new look. Gone was the country look, and hello, the orange sporting look. TNN Sports has reached the top of the summit. Look at the grid at the 98 version of the Winston. It distances itself from classic country, which had been known for years. That country sound from 1992 was non-existent. The late 90s was hard rock and metal, so TNN went with what's hip. Also, the network had more racing and action sports coverage than ever before. This style was a refreshing change, but if your network is called the Nashville Network, shouldn't it at least stayed with its roots? I guess with sports, it was an exception, but to a minor extent defeats the purpose. This backers will hang around until the final year they had the rights covering NASCAR. Like everyone else, the network logo stayed all race long, as shown in the upper right corner. Outside of the Winston, the grid was simple again and showed the standard portrait of the driver. CBS had the same photos in their broadcast. Late 1998 saw the final notable change on its graphics, the ticker. Remember when I said about the top 3 being the way? It was for TNN. They were like everyone else again. Upper left corner ticker, nothing awe-inspiring because it was already done. Sure, it was clean and simple, but they took a step back. In the grand scheme of things, I see its place because had it been on the top of this clip you're seeing, it would be a mess. Details were still there, but ESPN had already bit him in the dust, and come 1999, ticker sponsors was still around like it was in 1997. However, if there's one last thing they did ahead of their time was having the driver's sponsor appear on the onboard cameras. What we see today with Nationwide Insurance and Credit One Bank was the same thing fans saw back when Valvoline and Husqvarna popped up on our screens. It appeared on the lower right corner, and back then I was like, why? We don't need that graphic. We know Husqvarna and Valvoline are sponsored by those individual drivers. Why do we need it? Today, I just see it as TNN thinking ahead, despite their approach being a little bit Bush League. By Bush League, I mean not using the magic wand of Photoshop and decided to plaster the logo because you don't know how to get rid of the background without trying to Google a PNG image. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, okay, to be honest, it doesn't bother me at all. Along with TNN, 2000 was the end of CBS, ESPN, and ABC's main run, and later TBS, as 2001 there were 3 networks: Fox Sports, NBC Sports, and TNT. But before the year unfolded, Nashville would die as it was rebranded as the new TNN, and then later, the National Network. The new logo would appear on the top right screen, but didn't bother to change what they had and kept the old TNN logos. It made sense as if it was their final year covering the sport, and granted, it was the beginning of the end for TNN. TNN kept its attitudinal action for a few more years with WWF Raw as its flagship program after the NASCAR era ended. However, the TNN name would be gone, and by 2003, it became what is now known as Spike. Auto racing will hang around the network until 2004 with Champ. What the fuck? Oh my god, was the split that damn bad? Also, who wants to see a race in widescreen? Get that widescreen shit out of my TV. Get that shit out of my sport. Thank God Champ Car ditched the network because it was just cheap and bare minimum crap. Oh wait, that's modern day ESPN. Never mind. Carry on. Sorry, Spike. In conclusion, I miss TNN. Being a fan of the sport for almost 2 decades, it's nice to watch those races and get a different look at the sport. TNN kept the NASCAR roots alive, and while ESPN and CBS were just more of a spectacle, it pushed the sport into a national pastime. Nothing wrong with that, but the network was many fans' home of simplicity with incredible information that I just loved gaining by watching these coverages. It had Inside Winston Cup, which I feel today's NASCAR shows lacks that kind of content Ned, Jarrett, and Steve Verts provided back in the late 80s and 90s. Besides, it's one of the main reasons why my backup channel's name was TNN Sports 94. When I say it, it sounds badass, and it meant business. The network meant by it, and understood the NASCAR audience until they had to stay toe-to-toe with what's hip and what the network standards were about at that moment in time. Their country style wasn't gonna last, which was unfortunate as the genre music remains a cornerstone for the sport. Those who are still fans of the sport, that is. Today's music and Monster Energy's attitude isn't what I'm used to, besides the girls of course, they can stay. But the sports has lost its luster since TNN's last NASCAR telecast 17 years ago. Same can be said with the other networks that ended in 2000 and including ESPN's main run. I can't be the only one who feels the same. However, the memories remain of what used to be, as thanks to TNN and all the YouTubers who upload those races, we get to see the difference of what they stood for compared to the big networks people praise more. TNN deserves more credit than what they got, and hope this video got you to think about the network's run and its innovative graphics. While basic and constant changes were common, I can't deny their effort. With that, I salute you, TNN. You're a miss to this day. Well, that's the checker flag. Hope it was worth the wait. I could have gone more further, but I wanted to keep it short and simple. Episode 2 will come out either late November or early December, as I got my personal life to take care of. The next network will be Fox Sports. Thanks to the new graphics on their NFL coverage, I had to move it from one of my last episodes because of that reason alone. Oh boy, this will be fun to praise and tear to pieces, and because believe me, I have a lot to say about those graphics, for better or worse. Again, no graphic is safe. Thank you for watching, and let me know what you joined about TNN's NASCAR coverage. Until we meet again, make sure you check out my other videos I've done over the years. Some are great, some are cringeworthy, and others are factual. For now, I'll catch you later, and long live TNN Motorsports.